Oh, it finally downloads. Guys, get ready. Get ready. Oh. I'm so excited. Oh. By the way, I probably will never finish those achievements. Oh, it starts now. Okay. Oh, this will be quite a journey, guys.
Oh yeah!
Hello there, guys. I welcome you to Planet Coaster 2, finally. And before I thought I bring some reaction into it, but from now on I will commentate the footage I recorded and give you my experience now after playing the game for 11 hours without a break. And as you see in the main menu, they sticked of course with this idea having a planet there, and I just find this very cool that you stick by that with the prequel. And you can actually see Florida there and Orlando basically. And as I said, I played it for 11 hours and obviously I recorded everything, and it would just take much too long if we not time-lapse the footage you see. And right now I'm going through the new settings menu. I really love that they make it really big so that it covers the whole screen. And it really can see also the Keybindings here. And I'm already comparing them a little bit to Planet Coaster 1. I later even start Planet Coaster 1 and compare them side by side, just to see if they changed and if I have to adjust them a bit. Here you see the graphics screen, and you see many new settings like NVIDIA DLSS, and it's obviously great to have so much settings that also boost your performance, and you will see how they perform then later on in the game when we have 100,000 pieces. Maybe it works, maybe not. I'm not too sure about it because those piece counts, they really strain on the CPU rather than the GPU, but we see. Then we have the collision menu, and you have also the same settings here as in the prequel. And it's of course for myself as a pure sandbox builder great to just toggle everything off of those limits. Then I saw that they have those different gameplay modes. You have this franchise mode, sandbox mode, and I saw also that you need some Frontier account or something like that. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but I know that there are certain people that have a problem with that. But let's continue with the sandbox actually. And it was quite happy to see that they have so many settings there that you can set, and you can also set those settings later on when you're in the park. It's great just to have this overview when you make a new park. And here we are the first time in our new park. And the first thing I looked for was the lighting, because it's just gorgeous, this lighting. And you can also see me here switching through the different UI panels. And yeah, those UI panels, I mean, I still don't like them so much because they just are so huge and you don't see your park in the background. But I mean, it's really minor at this point, I think. Then I wanted to check out this park expansion setting, where you can basically see your park expansions, or I mean, in the sandbox it's only this one park. Maybe in the future they change something to that, so that you can buy additional land. I talked about that in the previous episodes a lot. And then yeah, I go straight into the path mode, and go completely nuts here because I want to strain the game now. I want to see what the actual performance is, and sadly when I did that, you can see that the footage, even though it's time lapse, it's a bit laggy and at some points it freezes a bit when I adjust those paths and go really ham then. But I really like that you have so many options now to lay down a path. It's just great to have this flexibility. And realistically, later on when we start our build, I wouldn't of course build such a mess. So everything's good here. And then I started to try out the landscape. And we have some additional tools to manipulate the landscape, including this roughness mode, where it basically makes an interpolation between up and down. And it's great for making landscape look much more realistic looking and a bit more so that the whole landscape doesn't look too artificially placed down. I also tested the new water modes, so we have 3 different water materials basically, and especially this rough water and natural water. I think it just looks gorgeous with those reflection and everything, the lighting, everything seems nice and blended together there. Also the new textures, I was quite excited for them because we aren't limited anymore to any map specific textures, I believe, so that you can have quite a bunch of them and mix them together. And I think they look really great because they are in a much better resolution than in the prequel. The only thing is on those rock textures, they look a little bit too repetitive. So when they tile, it would be cool if they just have a second blend in between so that it doesn't look too repetitive. So at this point I start Planet Coaster 1 and I directly compared them and constantly switching between them and just to find out if there are any changes to the hotkeys and to keybindings. And I think in Planet Coaster 1 I made a significant key binding, and that's the angle lock. So when you place down a scenery piece and you want to rotate it, I just press the space bar and I can basically toggle off if I want this angle snap to a 15 degree or 30 degree or 45 degree. And I just have this nice quick access by pressing the space bar, and I can build freely then. And so I did the same now in Planet Coaster 2. And I think it was the only really relevant key binding I made, since every other key binding there is basically the same as in the prequel. And I looked even at the UI color that I had in the previous game and adjusted it to dark blue. And just also this slider for the interface scale. So later on I set it to 90%. I think it's a decent balance between a balanced sized UI and to have also enough items on the screen, but in the end that the UI doesn't get too in your face. So 90% I think works best here. So from this point on you see me using those new key bindings and basically get a first feeling for how the game feels when you place down something with just a simple build mode, but also with the advanced move tool. And I see also that you have those axes that you see basically when you place something down. You can set those axes and specific distances to each other, that you can exactly place something like in 1 meter distance to each other. It's great for making something really realistic because it tells you exactly how far it is apart from something else. Great feature here. And the other thing is, of course, just this feeling I had really to get around this new build mode. Since it's a bit wonky, I think. It's a bit tricky when you come from the first title and try to figure it out. It feels a little bit wonky, and there are some clicks that you didn't have in the first one, another click that you have now in the second one, and it's just figuring out. And yeah, as you see, I go make another mess here, and I just try to experiment here. I don't know what I'm building. I don't really think about it. I just do it and think, how can I exploit this game in any way possible to find some maybe building techniques or new thingies that nobody thought about in the first place. Since I don't know how we do Mainstreet yet. Since I don't know if we use those fake paths or if we use actually those paths that are in the game that are workable. We even checked here the textures, different textures of them to see if, since they are recolorable, which is a big deal, and then it makes sense, of course, to use them instead of a fake path later on. But I mean, we have always this this opportunity for us to just use fake paths, and I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. So then I measured out, I was curious about the park size, the actual park size, since nobody could tell me how big the park is in beforehand. So I measured out the park size, and the park size is 1 kilometer to 1 kilometer. So we are good to go to build Orlando here. And I was a bit disappointed maybe because I thought they double the park size or make it a little bit bigger than that. But maybe they add that later on when they use this park expansion mode they implemented. So at this point I don't follow any specific route here. I just go where it leads me the game, and I've tried to figure out where are all the items in the game. Since the new menu system, they sorted it a little bit different. I think it's good what they did. They reduced those categories into buildings and sceneries, and from there on you have much more sub-categories. And I tested out here the fences, since I think fences are vital for our later building experience. Especially this fence, since it really looks like this generic fence that we used in the prequel a lot, especially for catwalks and so on. Yeah, just figuring out some nice parts that are usable for later on. I even made this little shortcut where you can like a certain item, and it's basically labeled then as your liked objects later on. But I saw how many items there are in the game, so I eventually lost it. And I mean, when we use a certain piece, I just go those 2 clicks into the menu and just pick it. And then I saw this very interesting piston element where you can, which is basically moving, and you can place pretty much anything on it and it moves with them. So I tried here to place some trees and some lighting, how the light is actually moving with it. It's a huge feature. And also I tried to place multiple pistons onto each other. So I don't know how to describe that. I mean, it's basically rotating in every direction. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous when you do it for animatronics, since I don't know what the limits are here. And but the system of those pistons, it's a little bit wonky, I think, still, because you have to be pretty aware in which building group every piston is, since you have another menu element on those pistons where you basically click on a button that says attach scenery, and then you get into basically the building a group of this piston, in which you can then set another piston, and then you can do the same and the same and the same again. But in general, I mean, this is absolutely enormous, because you can make so much out of this, I think. So then I tested out those new font elements. I'm a little bit disappointed in the case that you can scale them down even more than just 50%, because it would make sense here, since you could also use them as a sign, basically, where you can just place a sign down and then you place those little font signs in a very small scale in front of it. But this little text sign I just placed down, it's I mean, this is another feature, I think, because you can use that pretty much everywhere without any limitations, because you can scale that even down to 10%, I believe. And at this point, it's like 10 centimeters in real life. And so really, really usable. And also those little lamps you see there, they are super tiny. I think they will work great on dark rides later on for the catwalk illumination. But one thing I noticed here, which I can't believe they won't make in later updates, because I saw that those lightings or those lights are not, they can't be animated. So there isn't any switch where you can turn them on or off. They are only be turned on if it's basically day or night in the game. And that's of course a huge setback, or it would be a huge setback if they didn't bring that in with another update. Especially now where we have this super amazing new tool of the display sequencer with this timeline. And if we now don't get the chance to use that with lights, I'm just a little bit confused here, because didn't they test any dark rides in beforehand with flashing lights or something like that? I might suspect here a technical limitation maybe, because there are still those event lights, but those aren't scalable. So I suspect a problem where they can't make scalable lights work with display sequencers, maybe. Maybe they fix that in a later update. I hope so, because it's an absolute deal breaker then for dark rides. Since I won't be able to use any lights then, which are not toggable for dark rides, and have to use those big, humongous area lights or event lights. So at this point I just go through almost any item I can see in the game, and I also see those amazing animated water mills. And I already started to think then, with those pistons, you can of course make your very own water mill. Because those two water mills that they included, they are of course from the mythology pack, I believe. And it's too themed to make it into another scenery theme. Basically, if you would want to make, for example, Splash Mountain, you need another water mill that's in a different size basically, and you can just use the scale tool there to make it happen later on. Where we have to actually use those pistons and can make something really magical then. Especially for It's a Small World, I think it will be absolutely great to make animated little puppets there and make them actually rotate their head a little bit, and they sing and they basically dance there, and I think it's will be quite interesting how all of this works out at the end. One last thing to the pistons, and that is that you can scale them, and I think this would be really the cherry on the top if you could scale them down or up. For the piston that rotates, it doesn't make any sense to scale that up or down, but I think for those pistons where they move along a certain axis, it makes sense to make them scalable so that your moving object moves only a certain distance. And that's just better for the flexibility later on, depending on what you want to animate them. But yeah, I was mostly impressed also by the sheer item count in the game. There are so many new elements and items, and especially wall sets, and that those wall sets have actually walls that are non-quittable, which is a huge deal that we didn't have in the prequel, and that you can even scale them down then is it's really a nice thing to have in terms of flexibility later on, when maybe a texture is not perfectly in the same size of what we are trying to recreate. For instance, in the first park, I noticed when we made the Disney castle, the texture of those wall tiles were out of this world, and therefore it's great to have that in Planet Coaster 2. And by the way, right at this moment, we made it. The game crashed. So I don't know what happened there exactly, but certainly something went wrong there. But yeah, back in the game, I also wanted to try out a different map now. I think one was the Mediterranean was a little bit limited in their size by this sea that's basically on the park itself, but I don't think you can build on that. So in the end I decided now also for the later park that we start on the temperate map, and maybe over time when the game gets more DLC content and more updates, maybe they change or add more maps to the pool, and maybe you can even make those maps or buy additional land to make your park bigger in the end. So here I try to lay down just a flat ride, and it's this teacup ride which we also had in the Anaheim park, and I just wanted to see how you can attach scenery to an actual ride, and if you can also attach scenery on a track ride, because there was also this rumor that you can't place something down on the track ride, and sadly it's true, you can't place scenery, not yet at least, on track rides. And I mean, for this purpose where we would have to use something like that, maybe to animate a little tram in Mainstreet maybe, I would just use a coaster for that. I would make it so that you don't see the actual coaster, and hide basically the coaster car with the scenery that we overlay on top on it. And here I also test that you can attach, that there is actually no spatial limitation on how far those items actually are connected to the actual ride. And that means you could actually let that thing just let the coaster basically drive underneath the ground, and on top in your main street you have basically a moving tram, or at least it looks like it's moving. And at this point, I mean, there are so many situations where I can think of where this would make sense for make an actually car traffic, or make a plane over your park that's flying. There are so many possibilities there to use something like that. And yeah, here in the footage you can obviously see that I just play around with that and place this bus on the coaster. So at this point I decided to make a avatar, and I mean the inspiration here is pretty obvious. It's just Walt Disney. I mean it just makes sense, and I mean it's cool to also have this feature like in the prequel where you can just customize, and you have this little character that just is there on this planet, and where you can also interact with other people. I would like this feature. I don't know if they included it in the actual game, where you could just use your own avatar basically, and visit your own park, but also different parks, and this avatar could maybe even act as a park manager that strolls through your park even if it's closed, and maybe it boosts your stuff that is nearby, and there you have even a little management bonus there. And maybe even if guests see your park manager, they basically celebrate them, and I just think that there could be some more to this feature, that you can bring that into your actual park at the end. So right now I can remember that I saw that there are different park entrance types in the game, I think 4. And there's also one that's a failboat and a bus that you can place down, and it basically looks like they come from a ship or a bus travel tour and come to your park in that way. And this obviously makes perfect sense since we are trying to recreate Orlando, because there's an actually ferry boat that's attached in front of the Magic Kingdom. So there's an actually little sea in front of the park, where people could enter your park in that way. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. And we have the monorail, we have the ferry boat, and we have the bus. And those three types are manageable within the game features. The only thing where I'm not completely happy now is just the appearance of how the park looks now within the environment it's set. You have just this very plainish, and there's only a forest, I could imagine. You could say, okay, your park is now set into English landscape where you have a very rural landscape and you don't have any cities nearby. But I feel like there's much immersion basically lost then. Because when I want to do now Orlando, I need this sea in front of the park. And of course, it doesn't make sense if I only can show you basically 50 meters and then suddenly a green landscape is emerging. So I would hope that Frontier maybe would add different maps and maybe even a map editor where you can edit the map in the whole landscape, so that you can make the sea in front of it and then load it into your park, and you have the environment, the fitting environment. So right now you can see me basically trying with the very first step that we need in order to begin on Orlando, and that is my beloved ruler. And so I'm trying to decide myself on which item I use for that, since it's pretty important later on, because we use this ruler very much in the park. And so I try to use those art pieces. And that's one thing I really dislike about this game, because the art pieces, they are not the initial art piece which you take from your shelf is not exactly 4 meters, and that's a huge problem, because then I have to upscale it. But this upscale is not 100% precise. So there's always a little tolerance there. And for this ruler, of course, I want 100% accuracy. And so I decided to use actually wall sets or some elements that are connected on a grid, or to use this new feature where you can take an item and move it on this axis in different distances, and so you can exactly match it to make my 20 meter ruler. And so I decided against art pieces and just decided to use, I think, some wall set piece that's pretty close to the ground. It needs to be very close to the ground so it's readable very easily. But I wanted to come back to those art pieces, since they are a very important thing for me when I'm designing something, especially for things like Tomorrowland. It's an absolute essential piece that has to work. And this, of course, means, because we only have one rectangular art piece and not 5 like in the prequel, where you had those art pieces exactly match the same sizes in like half a meter, 2 meters, 4 meters, 8 meters, and so on. And this will mean, of course, that I have to scale them in beforehand and copy those around, or I have to use other pieces that are directly in the same size. But I just would like if those art pieces are consistent in their sizing, so that you also, if your art piece would match 4 meters, this would mean that I could scale them equally. When I have something that's 4 meters and suddenly I need it to be 64 meters, I can just multiply the numbers and scale it up and down. And if it doesn't match those units, it's of course very off, and I can't really calculate in beforehand how big or how small I need it to be in order to recreate my build later on. I mean, it's a bit complicated, but I think it makes sense if you think about it for a second. Oh, and by the way, I just absolutely forgot about it when I did this ruler. I did it with this just those plain columns or like tubes or something like that. And they are, of course, in a normal scenery group. And I wanted to change the color on them, just to make some adjustments to them. And so I tried, as I usually do it in Planet Coaster 1, to make a frame selection, where you have where you start on the top left, and then you drag out your cursor and let it go on the bottom right, and select your pieces, just like you normally do everything in in all of applications, you would think, right? I mean, you can do it in the game, but you can't deselect from it or add something to it. So you can make your frame selection, but when there are other things in your scenery group that you don't want to have selected and you want to deselect them afterwards, the whole selection goes away and everything is deselected. And that's obviously a huge bummer from the view of you want to build efficiently in a very short time and not have those core functionalities there to just, when I select something and maybe there are 10 elements in there I don't want, and I have now to specifically deselect them each by clicking each of them and not just make a little frame and can deselect them in one go. It's just not practical and easy to use. And I certainly think Frontier will see this in one spot and they hopefully add that functionality. Because there are so many content creators out there, which I know Frontier will listen to, they will have the same experience. And I guarantee you they will have the same bad experience when they try to deselect something, when they selected something. And they don't want to click on each little item they have. I think it's a non-brainer here at this point. But yeah, as you see, we made it so far now. And we have our ruler finally. I'm changing a little bit the color here, but basically that's the way how it looks. And in the next episode, we will finally start with Orlando. As I'm recording, it's obviously already built, the first part. And therefore, I think the result already is pretty good, I think. And I can't wait to show it. And we will have an amazing journey in the next weeks, months, and years to come. And I can't wait to build more in this game. And so far, in general, the whole gameplay, it's really great in general. I mean, there were many nitpicks I made now, but the big picture is an absolute milestone of a game, I feel like. And I already saw on Steam many negative reviews of people who apparently didn't play the game really long. Most reviews I saw were just completely bullshit. They didn't even touch the game or didn't even bother to play it. And of course, if you have that mentality, everything is shit. And so I think it's in that regard unfair to Frontier and their hard work that they had done. I mean, I have nothing against bad critique. If there is something that bothers you, you can of course explain it, but don't just say it's bad, it's an underdeveloped, or they didn't even bother to make this game, or some bullshit like that. But what I really hate on this is actually the fact that it tells a false story, because our community is looked at like, okay, they all throw this game down the toilet basically, which is not the case. I think many of you guys and also lots of other players actually enjoy this game. You just have to get a bit warm with it and try it out over longer periods. And just to see it misrepresented in that way, it makes me a little bit sad. And I just want to tell the right story here and continue to make videos and to recreate those amazing theme parks in this game within the tools and the limitations of this game. I always try, if there's something that bugs me or which I don't like, to address that, but to address it in a respectful and a factual base. And then you can have criticism, of course. Criticism is helpful in that regard. But if it's just there to, where it's pretty obvious that it's just for attention grabbing and where it's not really factual to anything, where you can also sense that the person that wrote it didn't give a fuck about the game, then it's of course not okay. And I feel just that I have a duty to call on that and to back up the game then. It didn't deserve to be misrepresented in that way, especially from people that know nothing about those games and about us as we are the players of those games. And so I really think you can say this game is an absolute highlight. Certainly Frontier will add future content and updates and fix those little things that are still there, but in general it's a great game. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, subscribe, like or comment, join our Discord server, watch my introduction video, the playlist of the time-lapse series, the POVs, the park release video, and play the park on your own. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.